Let's talk about Beau is Afraid.
I think before we dig too deep into the movie, I want to just get your read on Ari Aster as a filmmaker. Do you like Hereditary? Do you like Midsommar?
Yeah, I love both of those movies. I think that Ari Aster has a very interesting place in cinema right now because after Hereditary, he was known as the master of elevated horror.
It's elevated.
It's a very naughty word right now. And I think that he was kind of maybe misunderstood as a horror director because his movies are so disturbing and they can be gory and surreal and bring
Mhm.
you into kind of a nightmare place. But especially after seeing this film, I think it's becoming clearer that he's much more dynamic than a horror director.
Yeah.
He is one of our great new American auteur directors.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing it like him, except maybe Robert Eggers.
Yeah. Put him Eggers and him they kind of popped up in A24 around the same time, both starting off with very clear kind of horror-y movies.
I think he's great. I mean, I really think that he's incredible. You know, the idea of elevated horror is kind of insulting. I mean, you've got the Italian horrors of the 70s, which are very elevated. You know, you've got it's
Hmm.
like Lucio Fulci films. There's plenty of horror out there that is smart and has been smart for years and years. It didn't start with Ari Aster. And I think that he would be the first one to tell you that's the case. I think that it was sort of like this A24 cult fandom that kind of spun his reputation out of control.
Yeah, I feel like just like the 2000s era of horror, like just felt particularly trashy or something, or like movies like Saw and Hostel and stuff. Like it just feels like more like those are like big horror movies and like Human Centipede, and these like feel like particularly trashy horror movies. So
Mm-hmm.
just to see some production value and some craft with the cinematography in a horror movie, it did feel like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
So I could see why people sprung the term on Hereditary and Midsommar and stuff, the elevated horror thing. But it's very true. There's been really great artsy horror movies since the beginning of the genre.
Watch a movie like House. That movie is just as kaleidoscopic as any Ari Aster or Robert Eggers film.
I was thinking about House watching Beau's Afraid. I wouldn't classify it as horror. It feels like a nightmare comedy. And House
Yeah.
feels like a nightmare comedy as well.
Yeah.
Like you're like literally watching a 3 hour nightmare, but it's also really funny.
Yeah.
And it's a great combination. I want to see more movies like this.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's just such a dearth of original content out there. And to see a film like this that is just pure original thought and approach to filmmaking is such a joy and such a like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, much more so than air. Oh, that was a breath of stale air. Yeah, I will say I'm a big Ari Aster fan as well. I think Hereditary might be my favorite of his three, but I also love Midsommar as well, even though I've only seen that one once. I kind of wanted to rewatch it before this record, but I didn't have the time to. Was this your first Ari in a theater experience? Have you not seen his other movies in the theater?
No, I saw Midsummer in New York with my really good friend Amit, who didn't know what he was in for. And I just remember after we saw Midsummer, I mean, like I loved it, but he was rattled. Like I remember we just like, we walked out of the theater and he was like, we got to go to the nearest bar and have a beer and just sit down. And we just went out into this patio and we just sat there in total silence. Like he did not know what to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was like truly traumatized by it. And I've heard that with a lot of my friends. I remember my other really good friend Justin telling me when Hereditary first came out, he was like, you have to see this film. And unfortunately, I didn't see it in the theater, but he said that he almost had a full on panic attack sitting in the theater watching that movie.
Yeah, I saw that movie in the theaters when it first came out, and yeah, I was like, this is like the most intense horror movie experience I could remember. Or I don't know. I was never that big into horror movies like until Hereditary. I think Hereditary's like made me want to watch more horror movies
Yeah.
because I like kind of avoided the genre, I think, and then it goes like kind of a gateway. It's like, wait, I actually like this shit.
Yeah. And one thing that we should just say about Ari Aster is that all of his films are very familial. Like they all are kind of about families. Hereditary,
Yeah, definitely Hereditary, definitely Beau. Midsommar is a little bit of it.
in the very beginning of Midsummer, we got a lot of family dynamics, if you want to call it
Yeah.
that. Beau is probably, I would say, even more familial than Hereditary, which seems almost impossible. But I mean, Beau is essentially the story of a son going to see his mother, and
Hmm.
that's almost like, if you want to boil it down to one sentence, like that is what the movie is about.
Yeah, it's an odyssey. It's a journey. It's a trek to see his mom.
Man, I don't even know how to start talking about this movie, but we might.
Well, talk about your theater experience, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. I went to the Music Box Theater on a Sunday afternoon. Saw the first screening on a Sunday. It was 1:45 in the afternoon. I went with a friend and we sat front row.
Ooh.
So I wanted to be consumed by this movie.
Yeah, I saw this movie with a group of six of my friends, so there's seven of us in
Whoa.
total, which is like, man, I haven't seen a movie with a crew this big, and I don't know when, definitely before pandemic and stuff. So that was kind of fun having a big crew going to see the new Ari Aster movie.
That's awesome.
Um, I had a great time. I did have to take a bathroom break. And yeah, if we got to say this is a 3 hour movie, so it's likely you're gonna have to take a bathroom break, especially if you got a big drink with you, which I had some beer. So
And yeah, it is an odyssey. It's chopped up into, I want to say, five sections.
four,
I say
I say four.
okay.
Well,
Four.
let's hear your five.
Okay. So I would say movie starts in Chaos City, which is
Yes,
probably my favorite part of this movie is Act One.
yeah, I'd agree. The movie starts so incredibly well in the first act with this fucked up New York kind of.
It's unbelievable. It's just packing the screen with so much activity. Just these giant set pieces with maybe 50 extras, just of all different shapes and sizes, doing all kinds of chaotic activities, from like
Yeah.
buying guns on the street to throwing soup, to violence of all sorts.
The stab man, or what's his name?
Oh, birthday boy stab man.
I love him. He's like a completely naked guy with
Yeah.
his dick out, and he's just stabbing people. I love the stab man.
This movie is funny. It is so funny. I was cracking up through the whole movie. My theater was loving it. I don't know, how did people react in your theater?
My audience was receptive. I think they was laughing, and yeah, once the movie ended, I feel like everybody in the theater just like stayed in the theater and just like talked, just like was talking about it with amongst each other. Like
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't like I didn't see any angry walkouts or anything like that. It seems like everyone in the audience is vibing pretty much.
Yeah. Maybe we should kind of talk chronologically with the film, but
Yeah, we forgot like we were kind of doing a bit of like
yeah, what are the
the chunks
chunks?
of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got derailed there.
Yeah, this is going to be very chaotic because the movie is very chaotic. It's difficult conversation, but you got Chaos City, and then you got the suburbs with Grace and Roger, and Jeeves and Tony,
Yeah,
and then you've got the woods,
the wood play.
and then you've got home, and then you've got the trial.
Yeah, I would lump the trial with the home thing because the trial isn't that long, but
But it does feel sort of distinctly different. Like it almost feels like an epilogue or something like that, to the film.
yeah, a little
Because they
bit.
sort of rehash everything that's happened in a very direct way.
And it's like a very different, very visually separate from everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say those are the chunks of the movie.
And then and you do have some flashback as you're mentioning, like of him, young Beau on the boat. I thought it was maybe a de-aged Joaquin Phoenix, but it turns out there's just a kid that actually looks like that. He just like has this
Yeah.
bizarre kind of almost CGI looking face.
Yeah, I know. It's so fun because I thought that too. I mean, he does have like a very uncanny look to him.
He doesn't look like a real kid.
Yeah, he looks like a doll. Like his skin is like so smooth. And this is like a whole thing. Like the kid like on TikTok like had to be like, "No, I'm real." Like I'm not CGI. Like I'm a real boy.
that's
Um
that's crazy. That's really funny. Yeah, I think his name's like Armin something. I don't know. He's a real boy.
he's a real boy. I want to talk about something that I heard Ari Aster talk about, because, like I said, every frame of this movie is just packed to the gills with not only like action and interesting things like all over the screen, but also like stuff in the background, like little Easter eggs or little gags or jokes and like advertisements and the
The
graffiti.
graffiti's super good.
Yeah. There's and Ari Aster talks about it in this term called chicken fat. And what chicken fat is basically like if you watch or if you looked at like Mad magazines or even like The Simpsons does it a lot, like where there's like just things in the background that you maybe wouldn't notice on your first watch, but if you like kind of pause and you look, like you see like the titles of like a movie or
Mm,
an advertisement or whatever that's in the background that are all these kind of like subtle gags. That's described as chicken fat, and there is a lot of fucking chicken fat in this movie. Like
yeah.
I want to see it again, but I kind of want to wait for it to come out on video so that I can just pause and rewind and
Right.
really soak it in different ways.
Right. Yeah, that would be good. Do you have some like favorite moments from the city section? I know one of mine is just like the whole bit with the note getting slipped under the door of like
Yeah.
to just turn your music down, and there's like that one incredible slide that goes across the whole apartment. And it's like I
Yeah.
tell you to turn it down and you turn it up.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
cracking up at
Like
that.
Bo is just like very quietly sleeping in his bed and these notes keep flying under his door that like tell him to turn the music down and there's
No
no
music.
music going on and he's just so confused. It was hilarious. And then like yeah, then next door, like the apartment next door just like, erupts in this like crazy bass music. But I would say one of my favorite moments in Chaos City is when he needs to get water. And so he doesn't have any water in his house and he needs to take these pills that like very obviously say like always take with water. And,
Mhm.
and so he has to get water. And so he runs out of his apartment building, like runs through the street that's just filled with people dancing and some guy just going like help me help me help me help me help me.
Yeah. And that buddy like leaves the door open with like
Yeah,
and it cracks open and like everybody's from the
with
street
a
is
phone
filing
book.
into his
Yeah.
apartment
Yes,
while
yeah,
he's
that's
doing it and he's like, What?
yeah, yeah.
What?
Yeah, so he like props his door open because he's lost his keys. Um and runs across the street to get water and he's trying to pay for it but he doesn't have enough money and he's like giving this guy like piles of change until like he's got it and so it's like this really great way to like beat out the scene and like add this tension and behind him he keeps seeing like people like notice that the door's open and like sort of slowly walk in, and then like the whole city just walks into his apartment, and like literally not just his apartment building, but like goes up into his apartment.
Yeah.
And it's like 100 people, and then so then he's like outside of his apartment while there's like all these people just destroying his place. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. It's
Yeah, it's really funny. I was also thinking during this section, do you notice that one guy, there's like this dancing guy who's
yes,
shirtless with like cut off jeans or something? I
yeah.
was thinking that it kind of looked like reminded me of Caleb, my brother. Like Caleb used to have like a haircut just like that, and like the way he was dancing was like I could just see my brother being that guy. It's like, is that Caleb?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so we're in this just complete fucked up place. And I wanted to say this because there's a obviously this movie is very psychological. It deals with a lot of Freudian themes. It deals with anxiety. And a lot of people talk about it in terms of, this is all a metaphor for Beau's, anxiety. I want to just talk about this movie not as a metaphor. This movie, I just think that you should just take literally. Like this is all actually happening to this character.
Yeah, like going back to the nightmare thing, it's just like if a nightmare was your reality, then
Yeah.
like that's the movie. I feel
Yeah.
like,
But it's like it's dream-like, but I
yeah,
mean,
has dream logic a little bit, I would say. Like things just happen.
yeah, a lot of dream logic. Things just are happening all over the place. You don't know what's real or what isn't. But I think that the lines are so blurred that I think it makes for a better viewing experience if you just look at it literally and just say, this is happening to this guy. Like
Yeah.
everything.
It certainly makes everything funnier.
Yeah. Like everything is actually happening in this world. There will be 100 million essays written about this movie until the end of time about how it is about Freudian psychoanalysis or what have you. But I think everything that happens in this movie is actually happening.
Did you catch the Bill Hader cameo?
Yes. Oh my God. That was wild. I was
Yeah.
like, what a strange use of a cameo. I mean, he's the delivery guy who finds Beau's mom crushed by a chandelier.
Yeah, you just hear him through the phone. It's just a phone call. You don't cut to Bill Hader. You're just hearing his voice, and it's like revealed later that like you kind of get to see like a little like from behind, like, oh, that's Bill Hader that was on the phone. But
Yeah.
that's an incredible scene. Just like it's a really drawn out scene of like him on the phone with this guy, and like Beau, Joaquin Phoenix is in complete disbelief that this is happening. And he's like, maybe I dialed the wrong number. I'm gonna call you back. And he like calls him back a couple times, and he's like, I'm so sorry, man.
No, it's the like he's like you probably dialed the wrong number. Why don't you check? And he like looks at his phone. It's like it says mom like on the phone.
Yeah, it's like really horrifying, but also hilarious at the
Yeah.
same time, which is incredible.
And the guy's like, he's like, I don't know. I just got here and there's this lady. She doesn't have a face or a head.
Yeah, it's like the funniest way to describe it.
Yeah. And he's like, what?
The way
Uh,
you're talking, it sounds like maybe this is your mom.
yeah, no, it's so funny. And there's a lot of really good phone work in this movie. Like there's a lot of really funny, like voicemail messages. Like when he calls his mom and she doesn't pick up and she's like, leave a message if you ever want to hear from me again. Or like
Yeah.
when he calls the therapist and he's like, I'm not here right now. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Like just like so many little subtle weird little jokes that just fill out this world so well.
And yeah, there's like the moment at the beginning of the movie where he's in therapy and he sees that his mom is trying to call him during the therapy session and he's just staring at the phone.
Hmm.
That felt very relatable to me because sometimes, you see someone's calling and you just let it ring out because you just don't
Yeah.
want to deal with it at that moment. And it
Yeah.
really displays that kind of feeling really well.
Yeah. And if you look at his when he looks at his phone, all of his like recent calls, it's like mom, therapist, pharmacy. And then like at the bottom it says movie phone.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't catch that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like nods to cinema in this. I thought like there's like a weird movie theater in Chaos City and
Is it actually called Chaos City or is that what you're
no,
calling
I'm
it?
just calling it that. I mean,
Okay. I was like, oh,
yeah.
did I miss something where they call it that?
Well, I mean, again, like we'll just take it literally that like, the Chaos City is kind of maybe a representation of what our world feels like or what Beau feels like the world is like. It's just
Hmm.
guns and violence and madness.
Yeah, there's a person that like jumps off the building and like everyone's like egging them on to do it and their like body just like remains there for like no one like cleans up the body, like all the bodies just stay in the street kind of
Yeah,
thing.
there's just dead bodies everywhere. There's like cops are just indiscriminately shooting people. There's just like a table with like people just buying automatic weapons and then just like regular tchotchke stuff on the street and people selling hot dogs, but like people are just freaking out. It's just it's amazing. It really is. I don't know. I haven't seen anything like that in a long
Yeah, I'm
time.
surprised I haven't seen like a movie kind of depict a city in like that way before. Or like maybe they have, but never to this extreme. And it's just
Yeah,
very cinematic and awesome to see it realized like that.
there are 100 people doing completely different thing. Everybody is doing a completely different thing, and it's all fucking madness. It's
Yeah,
complete
it's kind of
madness.
like a Hieronymus Bosch painting. If you're familiar
Yes.
with him, like it's just like 1,000 characters doing something insane all at once.
Yes, yes, just detail, detail, detail. Oh, and just going back to the chicken fat thing, Ari Aster said, he was having a lot of fun just kind of like adding those weird little details. And there's a lot of Ray Liotta gags in it, actually. So like
Really?
the airline that he goes on, or like there's a shot of a plane, it's like Liotta Airlines. And I guess
Really?
like, yeah. And it's just like you're like, yeah, let's just like throw a bunch of Ray Liotta stuff in here.
Tribute to the man.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, we should throw out some performances we like in here.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
love Parker Posey,
Oh,
who
great.
comes up as Elaine,
Yep.
and we know her and love her from all the Christopher Guest movies, and she's an underappreciated actress, and I'm glad she's in
Yep.
this movie. And her scene is incredible, near kind of in the like the third act of the movie or whatever you'd say.
Yeah.
Um, I love her.
I think it might make sense to bring up the performances as we go through the structure.
Okay. Okay, so you want to? All right, maybe we should move on from Chaos City. I feel like we covered
Yeah.
that pretty good.
So the end of Chaos City or Act One ends with Beau getting shot at naked in the street by a police officer and then running into Birthday Boy Stab Man, running back, getting hit by a car. And then all of a sudden he wakes up in a beautifully clean suburban home in a teenage girl's bedroom.
Oh yeah, I do want to throw out one more thing just before that is like he's in the bathtub, and then there's that large man
Oh
just
my
like on
god.
the ceiling, like just like holding on, and they're just like staring at each other for a bit. Then he crashes onto him. Oh my god, I was dying laughing.
There's still so much to talk about though in that first act. Like the recluse spider,
Yeah, all
like
the spider stuff.
man, I mean,
It's
I
so
mean,
funny.
this could literally be like a 5 hour long podcast. There's so much to talk about. But yeah, let's move on to the suburbs, which had my favorite performance by Nathan Lane as
Yeah.
Roger, the surgeon dad. God, he's just like this kind of chipper, like fatherly figure who's like always saying like my brother and my
Yeah.
dude, my man.
One of the biggest laughs in the theater is when he's like, "My brother." Just the way he says it is
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah. Or he's like cooking barbecue and he like walks in, he's like, look alive, we're having barbecue. Like he has got so many amazing lines. This whole scene is amazing. So Beau, we find out, was stabbed by birthday boy stab man. He's like stabbed in the side and repeatedly into his hand,
Hmm.
which is a pretty brutal scene of him just like kind of holding his hand up to protect himself from this stab man. And he
Getting
just
stabbed.
keeps stabbed over and over and over into his right hand. It's like really brutal. He's also just been run over by a car. So he's just like got all of these wounds all over his body. Like his hand is bandaged. He's got a gauze on his side. He's got his face is all fucked up. His arms are all scratched up.
And like Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan are the ones that actually hit him with their car, so they feel
Yes.
responsible and they take him in
Yeah.
and take care of him, and they set him up in their daughter's bedroom, even though they have an empty room in the house, which is like dedicated to their dead son who died in the war, some war.
Yeah. And they have like a shrine to the sun. And I thought it was funny that his name was Nathan. And like Nathan Lane even like says like our boy Nate, and she's like, no, it's Nathan. And he's like saying it to Nathan Lane. I was just like, this is just adding a whole other layer of meta-ness to this movie.
But then you also get introduced to Jeeves in this section, who's one of my favorite characters, who's played by a French actor named Denis Menochet, I think. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but you
Menochet.
might recognize him from Inglorious Bastards. He's
Oh.
he's in the first scene with Hans Landa, like
Mm.
like he's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
hiding the Jews in his basement, and the whole
Oh.
milk scene. That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
guy.
Oh, that like the dad?
Yeah, the dad who's like has that first long scene
Oh.
with Christoph Waltz.
Wow, cool. Yeah, he's such a amazing physical presence. And
Yeah.
he plays the the deceased son's friend from the war who they've like adopted, who like lives in a trailer outside of out of their house and just like screams and breaks things and attacks people indiscriminately.
Did kind of remind me a bit of Raising Arizona, Leonard Smalls, especially when he's like
Yeah.
running. He kind of becomes like a hitman tasked with capturing Beau. And
Yeah.
like when he's like running and he's like got
Yeah.
his cracked phone and he's like
Yeah.
tapping like it's like GPS or something. I was
Yeah.
cracking up at that bit just because he's just looking so insane running. And
Yeah. Or when he's like there's a scene where he's like about to attack Beau and he's just got like all these like syringes in his back and they're like trying to stop him and he's like Nathan Lane's like, don't worry about it, it's okay, it's okay. Like but it's like clearly not okay.
he gets attacked by bees at one point, like kind of in the background, or like
Oh, he does. I maybe missed that.
I think so. Yeah, like there's like a whole sequence where like Bo's just like kind of sitting down, and you just like you're seeing him like being crazy in the background, like running around and like doing somersaults, and like he like attacks a beehive and he's getting stung up a bunch. It's a really funny bit.
Yeah, so many like fun things going on in the background. The daughter, Tony, is this very anxious teenage girl. I don't know how you describe her, but she's just
Kind
like
of like Ellie from The
the
Whale,
whale.
but a much better written character and better
Yes.
performed.
Yeah, and she's just like pissed off that Beau is in her room and she's filming him and kind of she pressures him to smoke weed at some point. He's like, I love that scene. He's like, what's in it? And she's like, three things.
Yeah.
and doesn't describe what they are. Just like,
Yeah.
um, and then he gets him really high.
And she ultimately drinks a lot of paint and kills
Yeah.
herself, which is an incredible sequence.
Well, so, yeah, and gosh, we gotta back up just a little bit because basically back in Act One in Chaos City, when he learns that his mom has died, the main drive of this film is that he's trying to get back to his mom's funeral.
Yeah.
Like that's the driving force for him to move along in this movie. And there's a whole thing in the suburbs of Nathan Lane's character or the daughter's character driving him to his hometown. But for whatever reason, they can't do it. And so he ends up staying like extra days. And there's a lot of pressure put on him to be there at the funeral because he gets this call from Richard Kind, who we don't know what role he plays in the family. At least maybe I didn't catch it, but he says basically over the phone, like, you have to be at this funeral. We won't be able to bury your mom in peace until you get here.
I love Richard Kind. He
Yeah.
gets his big moment at the end of the movie. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, we know him and love him from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and he's also really funny and a serious man.
Yeah.
Um, one of our great Jews.
Yeah, speaking of the Jewish aspect of it, Nathan Lane described the movie as the Jewish everything everywhere all at once, which I think is funny. Oh, and then another little factoid. So with all of the bandages and wounds that Beau has, Joaquin Phoenix actually added little like sharpened pins to the back, like in real life, to the back of the bandages so that he could kind of like feel like a poking or like something to kind of like make him realistically when he like stood up or walked around like make him limp or flinch.
Wow, he's a methody actor a little bit.
Definitely.
We can say that about Joaquin. And by the way, do you like Joaquin just generally?
I think he's good. I think he's a good actor. I like him.
Yeah.
But I will say Joker, I hate that movie with a fucking passion.
Yeah.
But I will say I do like Joaquin Phoenix. I think that he's an artist. He really takes his craft seriously and he does a good job in everything that he's in, even if the movies aren't good. But like I think that he's incredible in The Master. I think he's really one of his standout performances. But I think that this is my favorite performance of his.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, he doesn't his character is a little bit underdeveloped developed in some ways. They're like, but you don't really need him to be that developed, but he's just kind of reacting to the insanity.
Yeah. He's just a lot of like, what?
Yeah, there isn't that much depth to what he's doing, but I think he does sell the comedy and just like the insanity of the whole movie, which you really need. Yeah, I'm a Joaquin fan. I'll
Yeah.
admit it. The Master is great, of course.
Walk the line.
Yeah, I think he's good in that. Oh, I first saw him in Signs, another M. Night Shyamalan, and he's really good in Signs. Oh yeah, obviously there's her Inherent Vice. I love Inherent Vice. Paul Thomas Anderson. Come on, which was also very good. Joaquin's good, even if The Joker's a bad movie. I think he did a good job in it,
Yeah.
and he's great in this movie. And it's 3 hours of him in this movie.
Yeah, you better like him.
You get to see him in old man makeup. You get to see him as like a little farmer type guy. You get
You get to
to
see his balls.
his huge balls. Yeah, that's another thing we haven't touched on is that Ari Aster describes this movie as a movie about a man who needs to come. And that's like kind of what Beau is afraid of. Beau is afraid of coming. And
He
that's
is.
what the
Yeah.
title is all about. And that's just a hilarious premise right there.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of sexual, frustration, a lot of sexual repression. The mom later in the film basically says that his dad died on top of her having sex, and that his grandfather died the same way. So
And like
he's,
the father before that, like it's like keeps happening. It's really
yeah,
creepy.
it's like this just weird way to instill fear in him that if he ever comes, he will die.
Yeah, and of course because of that, he's all backed up and he's got huge balls.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the graffiti is like dicks coming and stuff. And
Yeah,
like they
yeah, yeah.
really there's a lot of background stuff like talking about coming. So yeah, it's very in your face that this is a movie about coming and dicks and balls. So much sexual repression kind of stuff.
Yeah, but that just goes deeper into the psychoanalysis of it all. There's a good chunk of the movie where he's in the suburbs. Um, and then after Tony drinks the paint,
He gets chased out of there.
yeah, Grace, the mom, who is played by Amy Ryan, she does a great job, especially when she's just got like that paint on her mouth and she's just screaming bloody murder and like basically six Jeeves on him and says
Hmm.
like, "Go get him and rip him apart."
Yeah.
And then so Beau like runs into the woods, and then this is where we kind of enter into a new phase of the movie, which is in the woods with this like traveling minstrel group. Like it feels
Yeah,
very
like a
like,
theater troupe.
yeah, it feels
Yeah.
very like medieval Shakespearean. Like they're like playing lutes and like all in this like fanciful dress
Yeah,
and
it's a guy dressed up like a ladybug, I remember.
yeah, guy dressed up like a chicken. Like basically they like rove from forest to forest putting on these plays. And so he kind of gets swept up in that, sits down to watch the performance, which is just this set piece is so like literal set piece, like the stage and the performance is so beautiful.
Yeah, really cool set design for the theater or the play.
The way that they show like the changing of the seasons with the tree rotating in different colors and different, like grass or snow popping up on the ground. Just really creative and beautiful, colorful.
Yeah. And then this bit kind of like evolves into like this extended animated sequence, which I just found out this morning that is by these animators who made this film I saw a few years ago called The Wolf House, which is a
Oh,
Chilean stop motion kind of horror animated film. That's really good. I recommend you check it out. My friends are big fans of this movie, The Wolf House, and Ari Aster saw the movie and he reached out to the filmmakers and they're the ones that created this animated sequence that you see it in the trailer of the movie, but yeah, it is pretty breathtaking.
and basically the animation is a recounting of his life.
It's like an imagined life, right? 'Cause it's like,
Yeah, but I mean, there are elements of it again, like that are metaphorical to what we have already seen. Like you could say that, the dog that chases him in the movie is Jeeves, or in the animation, it's like, he's chased by a dog, and I was thinking like, oh, that they're like that's Jeeves,
oh, okay, yeah, I didn't make that connection.
and then like being swept up by the flood and separated from his family seems to be where he is in the beginning of the movie, kind of separated from his mom and his family and in this chaotic world. It basically is a fictionalized telling of his life.
Yeah, because he has three
Like
sons.
there's this voiceover that's like, you will get married and you will find the love of your life and you will have three boys and then you will be swept up by a flood and then you will be chased by a dog and then basically like it takes him all the way back to the play.
Yeah, they're doing a play called like My Three Beautiful Sons or something.
Yeah, my sweet beautiful boys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's like really funny. And then like he actually like it's like this is my story. This
yeah.
is me. And then like the sons in the play like come and they all hug him. And then Joaquin actually says, "My sweet beautiful boys." And
Yeah.
I was laughing when they said that just because They already
Yeah.
telegraph it that that's what the play's called. Is really funny.
And one of those boys, I don't know if you noticed, it was Gandolfini's son.
Oh, who's in
Many
Saints of
Saints of
Newark?
Newark. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't catch that. That's funny.
He's kind of known as a son, which is interesting. Um, that all happens. This is really tough, folks.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I don't even know. I mean, yeah. You just got to see it, folks.
Yeah.
Because I don't even like really. I guess he like hitchhikes out of the forest and to get to the funeral, or like I don't even remember exactly how it transitions out of the.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's literally like he walks out of the forest onto a road, sticks out his thumb, and then gets driven into Wassertown, which is, I assume, named after his family because his last name is Wasserman. His mom's last name is Wasserman. And so then we go home to what is his house where the funeral is supposed to happen, but actually everyone's like kind of leaving and packing up, and the funeral's already happened,
He missed
and
it.
he missed it. Walks into his house. The mom is in a casket with no head.
Yeah.
You see all these photos on the wall that basically describe that his mom was a famous like pharmaceutical salesman, and that he as a child was put into all kinds of pharmaceutical advertisements.
Hmm.
So this kind of makes it feel like maybe, and again, I don't think that it's very productive to get into theories about this movie right now, just because you could just go on forever and ever. But pretty clear that Beau is somebody who's been he was probably like a guinea pig of some sort.
It doesn't dig into it too deeply, really, but they show all of that of like his young Beau being in all these pharmaceutical ads with the MW insignia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Then Parker Posey also shows up to the funeral late, which is his old love, and he's like kind of dumbstruck by her presence and like can't
yeah,
even like say a word when she shows up to the house.
yeah.
But they bang,
They sure do.
and it's one of the best sex scenes in recent memory.
Probably one of the best needle drops I've ever seen, or at least in recent memory, of Mariah Carey's "Always Be My Baby."
She's playing it on her phone, right? Like while
Yeah,
they're
she's like
fucking.
pulling it up on Spotify. And yeah, the way that Parker Posey like takes him into the room, she's like, "Come on, let's go. Where's the bedroom? Like, let's do this." And then like she's like got her boobs out. She's like, like let's throw on some Mariah Carey. And then she like, like really graphically like rips open the condom, gets on top. She's just like Parker Posey is just like game to like just like dude, she just sells it so well. And so they have sex to Mariah Carey.
She actually like restarts the song at one point, which is really
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. The Mariah Carey of it all is just wonderful.
It's the cherry on top.
Yeah, there were photos that came out before the movie released of Mariah Carey with Ari Aster on the red carpet, I think at the premiere, and everyone was like, "What the fuck? Like, why, why is Mariah Carey hanging out with Ari Aster?" And once you find out why, it's just a pure joy, just pure joy.
Yeah, but yeah, we should say that Joaquin does come, but he doesn't die.
He doesn't die, but Parker Posey does.
Yeah, but then she comes and then she dies.
Yeah, which is just like incredible because he's just like just in that like post orgasm just bliss.
Well, he's also like crying because he's like realizing that like, oh my God, I can actually come. Like everything my mom said wasn't true. And so he's like feeling all sorts of feelings.
And then he looks up and Parker Posey is like full rigor mortis, just like stiffened up dead.
Yeah, and like her eyes are bloodshot. Yeah.
He pushes her over and she just kind of just tilts over. and is just dead. And you still have the Mariah Carey like playing in the background while it's like Beau is just freaking out and she's just like dead on the floor. Unbelievable.
Then after that, the mom comes back. Surprise, she's not dead at all.
Yes.
Patty LaPone plays his mom, apparently.
Yes. I don't know much about her, but I think she's a big Broadway star. She
Yeah.
was in Sweeney Todd. So yeah, Beau's mom, Mona, shows up. Turns out she's not dead.
Isn't like revealed that like it was the maid that was the one that got the chandelier on her head? This was
Yeah,
like some birthmark that Joaquin spotted, like or
yeah,
something.
he knew it wasn't her hands. Basically, she just kind of tries to explain that the reason that she did it because she knew there would be no other way for him to come visit her. Like it was just an elaborate ploy to get him to come home. I mean, this part of the movie, if I have any complaints, I think this is where the movie really kind of started to drag for me.
Yeah, I kind of felt that way too, for whatever, even though it feels like this should be like a really big climactic moment, this confrontation with his mother. I found myself tuning out for some reason.
Yeah, it's very like expository. It's like, you know, the big reveal, this is why this happened, but I'm like, I don't care. Like everything's crazy in this movie. It's like I don't care why or what's going,
Yeah, I kind of wanted the movie to almost end like after Parker Posey's death. Like I was just thought like
Yeah.
maybe the movie was just gonna end right there, and I think I would have been pretty satisfied. But the scene after it, where you get the trial in the boat,
Yeah.
which feels very Truman Show. I was thinking about the Truman Show during
Yes,
that. And then you got
definitely.
Richard Kind kind of listing off all of these like little grievances and stuff that the mom has, all the ways, little ways he's disappointed her, and that shit's really good.
Oh, well, hold on. We got to back up because there's a major thing that we didn't talk about, which is so throughout the movie, Beau is having this recurring dream where he's in a bathtub and he's like looking at himself, like his mom is fighting with himself, and the and then the mom takes him up into the attic, and then so when we see Beau and his mom together again at the end of the movie, the mom is basically like, if you want to see what's in the attic, go up there because your dream wasn't a dream, it was a memory.
Hmm.
So again, that makes me want to take this movie literally again because I feel like it's Ari Aster just saying like it's not a fucking dream. It's real. This is all real. You know, this is all
Mm-hmm.
happening to this character. So he goes into the attic and he sees himself chained up.
He's really skinny. Yeah.
And it just reminds me of like just kind of that like classic trope of like the twin brother in the attic, like
The Simpsons
Malignant,
episode
or the Simpsons episode with
with
Hugo.
Bart. Yeah, Hugo.
I made a pigeon rat.
Yeah, my friend Monty was saying that was like that's like a an Emily Bronte kind of story, or it's like is it Jane Eyre or something where that happens, or I don't know. It's like an old literary thing of having like the sibling or
In the attic,
in
yeah.
the attic kind of thing.
But then next to him is a giant penis monster.
Yes. It just reminded me of a monster in a movie called Possession. Have you ever seen Possession?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but yeah.
A great movie, but yeah, the penis monster is kind of reminded me of that. But yeah, and it's really a funny visual. This
It's-
the full on
yeah.
dick and balls demon in the attic.
And then Jeeves comes back and just starts stabbing the penis monster in the
Yeah,
balls.
yeah,
And then the penis monster like just spears him in the head with his basically like praying mantis hands. I don't know. Where the fuck? It's like an insect like arms.
yeah, yeah.
And then Beau runs away terrified. Oh no, he kills his mom. He chokes his mom to death and then runs away, gets in a boat, starts boating away from the scene, and then he like goes through a cave and enters into this like giant stadium that is essentially a trial
Hmm.
with like thousands in the audience and Richard Kind as basically like the prosecutor with his mom
Yeah.
as like like and then he has like a defense attorney, I guess, that's like on the other side of this giant stadium that just says like defense 1-800 defense, like it's like supposed to be like it's like some shitty TV lawyer or something.
Yeah, I forgot that he actually kind of kills his mom, and then like his mom just shows up again in this trial, which is
Yeah,
pretty wild.
they like throw the defense lawyer off the platform and he like smashes Midsummer style like onto a rock.
Yeah.
And then the motor on the boat just starts glitching out. It explodes and the boat turns over and Beau drowns and credits roll.
So there it is, folks.
Jesus
Beau's
Christ.
afraid. Yeah, I'm surprised we actually went through it, but that's what happens in this movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to remember because it does feel like a dream in that way, like it's how it's hard to remember dreams. Like there's like so many like little details like you kind of forget. Yeah, it's definitely a movie I need to rewatch.
The only criticism I have of this movie is I do think that it is very long. It's too long. There are parts that feel like they're dragging. I feel like about an hour into the 2 hours into the movie, I was like, oh, I felt like we were hitting the 3 hour mark and I was waiting for the ending to happen, like right around
Hmm.
like going back home and the Parker Posey stuff. Like, yeah, I'm with you. Like right around there, I thought it was gonna end. And then it just like keeps going for like another hour. Listening to interviews with Ari Aster, he's very aware of the pacing of this movie. He likes that, we're basically on a downslide for the entire film. Like you start with all this energy, all super, super, super energetic film. And as the movie goes on, you just are kind of wallowing in the film and like the sadness and the anxiety and the slipping deeper and deeper into this kind of tragic world of Beau.
Yeah, I saw him talking with Ari Aster talking with Martin Scorsese after a screening, and he was talking about how he feels like the kind of like the emotional climax of the movie is like the animated sequence,
Right.
and it's like it's in the middle of the movie, which
Yeah.
like what screenwriters say like, oh, it's got to be like near the end of the second act is when you have your big climax, but it's like right in the middle, so it's
Yeah.
like it's an interesting structure to the movie for sure. And I
Yeah.
agree that I would I'd be curious to see like a 2.5 hour cut of this movie
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, it could be a little tighter. It could be like Midsummer and Hereditary, I feel like are perfectly paced films.
Yeah.
And this one is just like kind of indulging, which
Yes.
kind of and it's the audacious kind of vibe of this movie is how long it is and just all this crazy shit is happening. So that like that's all part of it. But part of me was wondering if I would enjoy a shorter cut.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's sort of a moot point because the movie is what the movie is. And this is Ari Aster's artistic vision. And
It's his blank
want
check, if you will.
it is his blank check. And he wanted to do, I mean, this is a movie that basically has been swirling around in his head since 2011 when he made a short film called Beau
Did
that
you get to watch that?
I didn't watch it, but I did watch like a recap of it. It's hard to find the movie online, but I found a video that basically has clips of it and somebody describing what happens in the movie. And yeah, it's like it's basically Ari Aster just had this idea of like of a anxious guy who gets his keys stolen, and that was the initial thought. That was all all he was going off of. I think in a lot of ways this movie reminds me of a lot of different things, but I would say this is kind of his Inland Empire. Like it's like his kind of stream of consciousness film.
Yeah,
He
I still
has
haven't seen that, the David Lynch film that's like 4 hours or what is it?
Yeah, it's a long movie as well, but you know, David Lynch, it was a stream of consciousness film where he was just, and I don't know if that's really Ari Aster's approach. I think he's a little bit more intentional than that. But it's an auteur's artistic vision and he's really going for it and doing what he wants and how he wants to make this movie and more power to him. So it's like if he thinks that this is a 3 hour movie, that's what it is. It's like I don't think that you can, I don't think you can chop it down. I'm sure this movie was probably a 4 hour movie. And he probably did chop it down considerably.
Yeah, I know
Um,
there's an extended cut of Midsummer out there that's
yeah,
a good bit longer, that which I haven't seen. So he likes to make some long stuff, but
yeah.
yeah, I would say I would give it an 8 out of 10. But I could see bumping it on a rewatch, bumping it a higher rating. What do you give it?
Yeah, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I think that I know I gave Mario a 9 out of 10 as well. I wouldn't put them on the same level. I
Yeah,
feel like
they have
I
different goals. They're different
yeah,
types of movies, obviously.
it's hard to rank films because I feel like I'm ranking movies like for what they are and not like against other movies because it's like you can't really compare Beau is Afraid to Mario. I
Yeah,
feel like
you gotta rate it against itself. Like, what is it trying to go for? How well is it
yeah,
achieving what it's going for?
yeah, and I feel like yeah, I would say that the only point I would take off is just that I think it's long. It's like I was feeling a little bit restless towards the end. But I think that it's one of those movies where when you go back to it, you'll realize the importance of every single frame, of every minute of the movie, and every line of dialogue. I feel like everything is there for a reason.
And I know you can see some influences there, like we mentioned, The Truman Show, and I feel like there's some Charlie Kaufman in this.
Yes,
I was feeling some Synecdoche, New York vibes, especially with
definitely.
the city stuff and its kind of surrealism.
Hmm.
And yeah, David Lynch, you can see a bit of that with just the kind of the dream nightmare vibes of it. Feels Lynchian at times.
Yeah. I mean, the movie was originally called Disappointment Boulevard, which is very like close to Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, I think he's one of our great new directors, and I can't wait to see what else he does. I think this
yeah.
is just going to go into the pantheon of a really incredible body of work.